The SOS, the colony ship, drifted in the endless dark. It was not a warship, not a strong vessel, only a carrier built to bring families and supplies to a new home. But now, it was silent, broken, and nearly out of life. The captain, Elias Rourke, stood on the bridge, his hands pressed tight against the console. The lights flickered weakly. The hum of the engines had grown quiet, almost dead. He looked out at the stars, but the stars gave no comfort. They were cold, empty, and far away. The crew whispered among themselves, their faces pale. Food was running out, water was rationed drop by drop, and the engines could not take them anywhere. Children cried in the sleeping quarters, and the sound cut through the hearts of every adult on board. Hope was leaving them, just as the warmth of the ship was fading. "Captain, we should send it again," whispered his second-in-command, Lieutenant Kara Miles. Her voice shook, but her eyes were steady. "Send it again," Elias repeated, almost to himself. Yes, they had already sent the distress signal more than once, but the void had not answered. Still, what choice did they have? The captain pressed the button, and the old beacon lit up once more. A thin pulse of energy shot into the darkness, carrying their desperate cry. "This is the colony ship Hope's Horizon." His voice echoed through the transmission. "We are stranded, systems failing. We need help. Anyone, please respond." The words faded into the static, swallowed by the stars. The crew waited, holding their breath. No one spoke, no one moved. But the comms stayed silent. Only the hiss of emptiness replied. Hours passed, then days. The distress beacon kept repeating, again and again. But no rescue came, and in the silence, people began to wonder if anyone had even heard them. Some crew members prayed, whispering to old gods of Earth. Others cursed, angry too. Their dream of a new world had become a coffin, and some just sat still, staring into the void with empty eyes. But one thing haunted them all, the whispers. At night, when the ship grew most silent, the comms would flicker with faint sounds. Not words, not signals they could understand, but soft noises, like whispers. Some swore they heard breathing, others claimed it was only static. But Elias knew better. He had been in space too long to mistake the feeling. Someone or something was listening. The crew grew restless. "Captain, maybe no one will come," Kara said one night, her voice heavy. "What if the signal is lost in the dark? What if no human ship is close enough?" Elias did not answer right away. He looked at the young officer, saw the fear in her eyes, the same fear that lived in all of them. Then he said, "If we stop sending, no one will ever come." His words were strong, but his heart was weak. Every day the children grew thinner, the crew more tired. The air recycling system struggled, and every breath felt heavier. The ship had once been called Hope's Horizon, but now hope itself seemed to fade beyond the horizon. And then it happened. The comms screen flickered. A strange pulse of light crawled across the console. At first, Elias thought it was another system failing, but then came the sound. Not static, not whispers, but a pattern. A voice that was not human, not machine. It was deep, broken, and alien. The crew rushed to the bridge, their eyes wide. The signal was strong, repeating in strange rhythm. Symbols appeared on the screen, twisting lines that shifted like they were alive. The ship shuddered, as if the stars themselves had noticed them. For a long time, no one spoke. Then Kara whispered, "Someone heard us." Her words trembled with both hope and fear. But Elias did not feel hope. He felt something else. Something and cold crawl along his spine. Yes, someone had heard them. But what kind of someone? The distress signal had been answered, yet deep inside, Elias wished it had not. Because sometimes in the black sea of space, not every answer is salvation. Sometimes the thing that comes when you call is worse than silence. And in that moment, with his crew standing behind him and fear thick in the air, Captain Elias Rourke realized the truth. They had knocked on a door in the dark, and now, something had opened it. The unexpected reply. For 3 endless weeks, the distress beacon kept crying into the void. The crew had begun to lose hope, their faces hollow, their voices tired. Some whispered about surrendering to fate, letting the dark take them. Others clung to the small fire of belief that someone, somewhere would come. Then the reply arrived. It was not the sound of human comms, not the comfort of English words, not the coded voice of Earth's fleet. It was something else, something older, something deeper. The message was not heard all at once. It came in fragments. At first, a strange pulse through the ship's comms, a vibration, like the echo of a giant heartbeat. Then, lines of symbols began to crawl across the screen, glowing faintly before fading. The crew leaned close, watching the shapes bend and twist like they were alive. No one could read them, but all could feel them. "Is it a code?" Kara asked, her voice low. "Not one of ours," Elias answered, his face pale. The captain's fingers hovered above the console, unsure if he should touch it. Every instinct told him not to. Every human bone in his body screamed danger. But then, the sound came. A voice. Not human, not machine. It was deep, broken, layered with tones that shook the walls. The crew froze. The children in the lower decks began to cry as if they sensed it too. The voice repeated again and again, louder each time. It was speaking, but in no language they knew. Some words cracked through like broken glass. Al, Ive, belong, feed. The bridge fell into silence. A few crew members whispered prayers. Others clutched their weapons, even though guns would be useless in the void. The human heart understands fear before the mind does, and every person on that ship felt it. This was no rescue, yet still hope fought inside them. "What if it's an ally?" Kara asked again, almost desperately. "What if they just don't speak like us?" Her voice carried a fragile light, but her eyes were wet with fear. Elias didn't answer right away. He watched the symbols move across the screen again. The shapes twisted, rearranged themselves until they began to look like something familiar. At first, like stars in a map, then like bones in a rib cage, and then, like cages, rows and rows of cages. The crew gasped. No one spoke. No one wanted to. Because in that moment, they all understood the same thing. This was not help. This was a hunter answering the cry of prey. The signal grew stronger, shaking the hull. The lights dimmed. The engines groaned as if something enormous was pulling on them. Through the viewport, the stars began to vanish, one by one, not because they were fading, but because something vast was blocking them. A shadow loomed, bigger than any ship humanity had ever built. It was not shaped like a vessel, not clean and metallic. It was jagged, organic, pulsing faintly as if it was alive. Its surface writhed with movement, like skin crawling. And then came the sound, a deep rumble, half a growl, half a laugh. It echoed across the ship, rattling the bones of every human on board. "Captain?" Kara's voice was barely a whisper, but Elias could not answer. He could only stare, his throat tight, his blood cold. The thing outside their window was not a savior, not a rescuer. It was an answer, yes, but not the answer they had prayed for. And as the alien signal wrapped around their ship like a claw seal, losing on prey, Elias realized the truth. By sending their distress call, they had not summoned salvation. They had summoned something far worse. They had told the galaxy they were weak, and now something had come to claim them. In the silent bridge, no one dared to breathe. For the first time in weeks, the crew wished their message had been ignored. But it was too late now. The reply had come. And what returned from the deep was not mercy. It was hunger, first contact in darkness. The shadow outside the ship grew larger until it swallowed every star. No one on the bridge could see where it began or ended. It was as if a living wall of night had drifted against them. The ship felt small, fragile, like a candle burning before a storm. The crew held their breath. Every system flickered, lights dimmed, air vents rattled. Something vast pressed against them, not touching, but close enough to be felt in the bones. The human mind screamed, "Run!" But there was nowhere to go. They were trapped, caught in the gaze of something they could not even name. Then it moved. The shadow rippled. A low vibration shook the hull. A beam of faint light scanned across the human vessel, but it was not light. It was alive, crawling across the hull like the tongue of a predator tasting its prey. Metal groaned under its touch. The walls of the ship trembled. The children below screamed as if they sensed the danger before anyone else. "Docking attempt detected," Kara whispered, staring at the console. Her voice shook. "No," Elias said quickly, though he already saw it too. The computer showed a connection forming, not with clamps or machines, but with something that writhed. A tendril of the alien ship pushed toward them, twisting, bending, latching on. It pulsed like muscle, glowing faintly red from inside. The sound was sickening, wet, like flesh tearing. The bridge crew recoiled, some covering their mouths, others clutching their weapons, even though they knew bullets would be useless. The tendril slammed again. The human ship's docking bay wrapped around it and locked tight. For a moment, silence returned. Then, a sound came through the air ducts. Breathing, slow and heavy, not human. It was inside. The corridor lights flickered, shadows stretched long across the walls. The sound of metal groaning echoed as the airlock doors creaked. Kara whispered, "They're coming aboard." No one answered, but everyone knew she was right. The first shape stepped through. It was tall, taller than any human, its limbs too long, bending wrong, its skin glistened as if wet, and its head tilted at angles no neck should move. Its eyes, if they were eyes, glowed faintly, but not with light, more like heat behind a thin layer of glass. And when it opened its mouth, the sound that escaped was not words but hunger. Another shape followed, then another. They moved slowly, carefully, like predators entering a cage where the prey had no way out. The crew stepped back, weapons raised, but fear made their hands shake. The aliens did not attack, not yet. They only studied, tilting their heads, watching. One of them extended a thin device, glowing faintly. The crew froze as the alien pointed it across the room, scanning them like cattle in a field. A whisper came through the comms again, broken English mixed with the alien tongue. "You called. We answer." The voice was sharp and cold, but the meaning was clear. They had been heard, but not saved. Elias felt the weight of every decision crash down on him. By sending the SOS, he had brought this upon them. His crew looked at him now with eyes full of questions, fear, even blame. But before he could speak, one alien leaned close, its face inches from his. Its breath was hot and foul, its mouth curved in something that looked like a smile. "You belong," it hissed. The bridge went silent. The humans understood now. This was not a rescue, not even an invasion. It was a harvest, and as the aliens spread across the ship, opening doors and scanning the crew, Elias Rourke realized something that cut deeper than any fear. They had not been found by chance. They had been claimed, the horrifying truth. The aliens moved through the corridors like shadows with weight. Every step they took made the deck plates groan. Every breath carried a wet hiss. The humans tried to stay calm, but their fear was thick, rising like smoke. Mothers pulled children close. Fathers stood in front of families with nothing but empty hands. On the bridge, Captain Elias forced himself to stand tall. If he showed fear, his people would break. But inside, his heart was sinking. These creatures had not come to give help. They had come for something else. The alien with the glowing device finished scanning Elias. Its long fingers tapped the tool, symbols flashing across its surface. Then, in broken English, the voice came again. "You survive. Good. Strong. We take." The words chilled the crew more than silence ever could. Kara's lips trembled as she whispered, Take where?" The alien's head turned toward her, its neck bending too far, its eyes glowed faintly brighter. It did not answer with words, only with a low laugh that rattled the walls. More of them entered the ship now. 10, 20, maybe more. They moved with the confidence of predators who had done this 1,000 times before. The humans were not their first prey, and they would not be their last. One of the aliens pressed a claw against the wall. Metal hissed and melted under its touch. It tore open the bulkhead like paper, revealing the docking tube. Through the opening, the crew finally saw what waited inside the alien ship, and the sight froze their blood. Cages, rows upon rows of cages, each filled with creatures that were once alive but now broken. Some still breathed weakly, their bodies thin, their eyes hollow. Others lay unmoving, their skin pale, their mouths open in silent screams. The smell of rot drifted across the tube, thick and suffocating. This was no rescue vessel. This was a prison, a slaughterhouse that traveled the stars. Gasps filled the bridge. One crew member dropped to his knees, whispering, "God help us." Another shouted, "We can't go in there." But the aliens only hissed, shoving them forward, pointing toward the cages. Elias clenched his fists. Every instinct screamed to fight, but he knew what that would mean. His people were outnumbered, their weapons useless. Still, he could not let his crew see him break. He met the alien's stare and forced his voice steady. "We are not yours," he said, but the alien tilted its head as if amused. Its lips twisted into a cruel shape. "You call. We come. You belong." Those words sank deep into every human heart. They realized the truth. The SOS had not brought salvation. It had marked them. The beacon was not a cry for help anymore. It was a signal of weakness, and predators had answered. Kara's hand shook on her sidearm, her voice cracking as she whispered to Elias, "Captain, what do we do? We can't fight this. We can't win." Elias looked at her, at his crew, at the terrified faces of the children clinging to their mothers. He wanted to give them hope. But hope had been torn away the moment the cages were revealed. The horrifying truth was clear now. This was not just about survival. This was about becoming part of something worse than death. They were not passengers anymore, not even prisoners. They were stock, waiting to be stored, waiting to be used. And in that crushing silence, Captain Elias Rourke swore one thing to himself. If these monsters thought humanity would kneel quietly, they would learn a lesson written in blood. Better to burn than to bow. But for now, he waited, because to fight too soon would only feed the cages. Faster, fight or submit. The cages burned into every human mind. Mothers pulled their children closer. Fathers clenched fists though they had no weapons strong enough. The aliens hissed and pointed, shoving the crew toward the docking tube. Every step carried the stench of rot. Every glance at the cages told them what their future would be. Some began to break. One man dropped to his knees, crying, "Please, don't take my family, please." An alien leaned down, its long fingers brushing the man's hair like one might touch an animal. Its mouth stretched into a grin, and it hissed, "Family. Belong." The man sobbed harder, his wife screaming as the alien dragged them forward. The crew's fear spread like a sickness. Some whispered prayers, others begged, but in the middle of the chaos, Elias stood still, his jaw tight. His people looked at him, their eyes asking the question none dared to speak aloud. Would they go quietly? Kara stepped close, her voice trembling. "Captain, if we fight, we die. But if we don't fight..." Her words broke off as her gaze drifted back to the cages. They both knew what awaited them if they submitted. A slow death, stripped of dignity, stolen of humanity. Elias lowered his voice so only she could hear. "Better to burn than to bow," he whispered. Kara's eyes widened, a flicker of fire inside them. She nodded, the decision clear. Nearby, a young crewman gripped a wrench, his knuckles white. Another clutched an old hunting rifle, barely working. Others grabbed tools, pipes, anything with weight. It wasn't much, but it was something. Humans had always fought with less and survived. The aliens noticed the shift. Their heads turned, glowing eyes narrowing. One hissed a warning, slamming its claw against the wall, sparks flying. Another raised its device, symbols glowing as if preparing to strike. The humans froze, hearts pounding. The choice was no longer tomorrow's problem. It was now, submit and march into the cages like animals, or fight and maybe never see another sunrise. Elias raised, his voice steady and strong. "This ship is ours. This crew is mine. We do not belong to you." The words rang across the bridge, and for the first time since the nightmare began, the crew lifted their heads, some with tears, some with fear, but all with fire. The alien nearest to Elias tilted its head. "You fight?" it asked, the word broken, but clear enough. Its mouth stretched wide in a grotesque smile. "Good. Feed better when they fight." A growl rose in Elias's throat. He gripped the console with one hand and raised the other. "To every human here, if you want freedom, take it with your hands, with your teeth, with your blood, but do not give them your soul." The moment snapped. A young crewman swung his wrench, striking an alien's arm. The sound of metal on flesh echoed. The alien hissed, stumbling back in surprise. Kara fired her pistol, the shot small but sharp. The bullet tore into the alien's chest, not killing it but slowing it. Screams filled the corridors as humans attacked with desperate rage. Pipes crashed, sparks flew, fists struck. The ship became chaos. The aliens, once calm and confident, now hissed and lashed out. Their claws tore metal, their voices shrieked through the halls, but they had not expected resistance, not from prey, not from humans. The fight had begun. And though blood already stained the walls, for the first time since the distress call was sent, the humans were no longer only victims. They were defiant, and defiance was something the galaxy had never seen before. The human defiance. The corridors shook with chaos. Screams of humans and the shrieks of aliens clashed like fire and steel. Blood splattered against the walls. Sparks rained from broken lights. The air was filled with smoke, sweat, and the sound of fists striking against monsters. Elias moved through the storm like a man possessed. He swung a oaken metal rod with both hands, smashing into an alien's arm. The creature staggered, its claws cutting deep into the wall instead of his chest. "Hold the line!" he shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. "We fight together!" The humans were weak, hungry, tired. Yet something burned inside them that no cage could kill. Mothers shoved their children behind cover and picked up tools. Fathers swung pipes until their arms bled. Young crew members leapt at creatures twice their size, teeth bared, rage pouring from them. For the first time, the aliens hesitated. They had faced countless species before. Some begged, some prayed, some surrendered. But these humans, they fought like dying stars, burning brighter the closer they came to death. One alien hissed and lunged at Kara, its claws outstretched. She rolled aside, firing her pistol into its neck. The shot did not kill it, but it screamed, its glowing eyes dimming. She stood tall, breathing hard. "Not cattle," she spat. "Not yours." Nearby, a group of humans cornered another alien. They swarmed it with knives, pipes, bare fists. The creature thrashed, but it fell beneath the weight of their fury. When it hit the ground, dead or dying, the humans roared. A sound of triumph, a sound the aliens had never heard before. Fear. The aliens began to feel it. Not fear of death. They were predators, used to killing, but fear of something they did not understand. How could prey bite back? How could prey draw blood from the hunter? Elias saw it in their eyes, the flicker of doubt, and he pressed harder. He smashed another alien across the face, his voice rising above the chaos. "Remember this day. We may die, but we will never kneel." The crew answered with roars, with screams, with fury. Even children threw debris, their small hands defiant against the giants. Every human, weak or strong, became part of the storm. The alien ship's tendril pulsed, glowing red as if sensing the change. The walls of the human vessel groaned as the docking tube tightened. The monsters tried to push harder, forcing the humans toward the cages, but the harder they pushed, the more vicious the humans became. Kara stood shoulder to shoulder with Elias, her face streaked with blood and sweat. "They're not invincible," she gasped, firing again. "No," Elias said, swinging his rod until his arms burned. "But neither are we. The difference is, we choose how we die." And in that moment, something shifted. The humans no longer looked like prey. They looked like warriors, small but unbreakable. Every scream, every strike, every drop of blood told the same truth. They would rather burn together than bow alone. The aliens staggered back, hissing, confused. For the first time in their long hunt across the stars, they saw creatures who refused to accept chains, and that refusal, that defiance, terrified them more than any weapon ever could. Worse than death, the battlefield was silent for a heartbeat. Smoke drifted through broken corridors, and bodies, both human and alien, lay twisted in the red light. The ship creaked, bleeding sparks and fire. Every breath from the survivors sounded like a storm trapped in their lungs. Elias stood with blood in his hair, his hands shaking around the bent metal rod. His eyes scanned the ruined passage. They had fought, they had resisted, they had taken lives from monsters who thought them weak. And yet, the enemy was not done. The tendril from the alien ship pulsed again, brighter now. The walls trembled as if the universe itself was groaning. From the shadows, the surviving aliens hissed and stepped back, not in defeat, but in something worse. A signal had been sent. Reinforcements were coming. Kara limped to Elias's side, her face pale, blood staining her arm. "They're calling for more," she whispered. "If they return, there will be no one left to fight. No one left to tell." Elias's chest tightened. He knew she was right. The humans had given everything, but against an endless swarm, courage would only buy minutes, and then extinction. He looked at the reactor room, its heavy doors cracked open from the battle. Inside, the core glowed with unstable light, humming like a living heart. An idea struck him, sharp and merciless. It would not save them, but it could stop the hunters from ever carrying their bodies away. "They want us alive," Elias muttered, almost to himself. Kara turned her head sharply. "What are you saying?" He met her eyes, and she understood before he spoke. Her lips trembled, her breath caught, but she nodded. The choice was simple and terrible. To the aliens, death was a mercy. What they planned for humans, cages, experiments, eternal slavery, was worse than death. Elias would not allow it. Not for his crew, not for his people. He raised his voice, broken but steady. "Everyone who can hear me," he shouted across the comm system. "The fight is not over, but we cannot let them take us. They want our fear, our chains, our children, but they will have only fire." The survivors turned, bruised faces lit by the reactor's glow. Some cried, some screamed, but none argued. They understood. Better to vanish in light than live forever in darkness. Elias moved to the core controls, his hands trembling as he overrode the safety locks. The ship shook harder, alarms blaring, the countdown beginning. Kara placed her hand on his, her eyes wet but fierce. "If this is the end," she whispered, "let it be ours." The aliens shrieked, sensing the change. They charged, desperate now, but the humans did not retreat. They blocked the halls with their bodies, their blood, their fury. Every second bought was another step closer to freedom. The core screamed, its glow turning blinding white. Elias felt the heat against his skin, his bones rattling. He looked once more at his people, at Kara, at the faces scarred by suffering but burning with defiance. Then he spoke, not to them, but to the stars. "Remember us," he said, his voice steady at last. "We were human, and we were never yours." Light exploded. The ship became a sun, tearing itself and the alien vessel apart. Metal turned to ash, flesh to dust, screams to silence. The galaxy shuddered as the shockwave rippled outward, and then nothing. Only the echo of their choice remained, across the stars, when others would one day whisper about the humans who sent an SOS. They would not tell of weakness or surrender. They would tell of a people who faced something worse than death and chose fire instead. The end. Enjoyed the story? Like it and subscribe for more.